All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Heather Thompson. I'm Director of Alumni Relations here at UWS. Tom, we are so excited to partner with the Link Center and the Center for Continuing Education on this 4-part speaker series. Today, we have 3 amazing alumni here to talk about their experiences and how it pertains to 2 of the NACE competencies, professionalism and leadership. We have Jassy Scandell, class of 2002, graduated with a degree in accounting. We have Monty Stewart. Do you go by Dr. Monty? Okay, whatever works, everyone. Class of 2012, communicating arts. And Dr. William Zimmer, class of 17, biology and chemistry. Liza Shellquist, career development manager here at UWS and UW Superior alum, class of 19, will provide an overview of the NACE competencies and today's core skills.
Thanks, Heather. I'll come over here. So, hi, everyone. I'm Liza Shellquist. I'm the Career Development Manager of our Career Services Department. So what I do is I help students explore major and career paths. I also help you build core skills that are needed in the workplace, such as these NACE competencies that we're talking about today. And I also help connect students to jobs and internships through Career Central events. So today we're going to learn more about the NACE core competencies, like Heather mentioned. NACE is a national association that has collected 8 transferable skills desired by both employers and colleges. So developing and articulating proficiency in these skills will give you a cutting-edge advantage when it comes time to pursue further education or employment. NACE competencies are also considered transferable skills, which you've maybe heard before. So you can utilize those in multiple capacities. Today, our fabulous alumni have returned to campus, and they're going to elaborate on their experience with leadership and professionalism skills. Professionals who practice leadership identify and utilize team members' strengths to move towards an organization's goals. And then individuals who practice professionalism, they understand company work environments, demonstrate effective work habits, and they positively represent interests of the larger community and their workplace. So what does that mean, right? Sample behaviors for both skills could include, but do not limit, inspiring, persuading, and motivating oneself and others towards a shared vision. It could be seeking out and leveraging diverse resources to achieve a goal. It could be serving as a role model to others by approaching tasks and showing confidence in the mission. This could be just planning and managing projects, maintaining professional brand too. So like on Handshake or LinkedIn, having that positive online presence, and then being present and prepared at the workplace and outside of the workplace as well. All right. So identifying these and developing them takes time and practice. Students are welcome to visit the Link Center, which is located just across from the elevators in the first floor of Swenson Hall, and we can provide more information. And another great way to develop these core skills is by attending campus events just like this. So good job, everyone. Now I will hand it over to Heather and our alumni to talk about more ways that you can embody these skills.
Thanks, Liza. All right, our amazing alumni. We're going to have you start by sharing your educational and career experiences. Really looking for your story. What led you to this moment right now? Okay, we'll start with you, Will.
So as they mentioned, I'm Dr. William Zimmer. I am a chiropractor here in Superior. I'll address the career path and education along with the experiences all in one. So when I was in high school, when I was in elementary school, I was in a car accident. Parents took me to the hospital, was given the all clear, but I was still dealing with pain. So my parents took me to a chiropractor, and I continued to see him all the way through high school. In high school, we were assigned a job shadow assignment in which I decided to shadow my chiropractor. And I fell in love with his holistic approach to healthcare, his whole body approach to the person, and making sure they were embodying health. And so I started to use him as a mentor, and he kind of gave me guidance in what I should be doing moving forward. I attended UWS and started with a major in chemistry. And then I was crazy enough to pick up the second major in biology halfway through. And during that time, continued to talk to my chiropractor, asking him where I should go to grad school, because in the United States, there's only 16, as of that time, there was 16 chiropractic schools available in the United States. He gave me a list of 3. I decided to shadow, and I fell in love with Northwestern Health Sciences University down in the Twin Cities in Bloomington, Minnesota. And in 2020 or in 2017, started my education there. 4.5 years later, graduated and moved back to Ladysmith, Wisconsin, did my internship with my chiropractor, and during that time was looking at opportunities up in Superior. It was in the middle of COVID. No opportunities existed. They decided to take a chance on me. We built a clinic from scratch just across the street in Central Flats. And in 2021, we opened, and we've been going strong ever since. So that is how I got here.
Hey everyone, Monty Stewart, he, him pronouns. I am the program director for our Trio McNair Scholars Program here at UW Superior. So I've actually been working here 11 years now already, or almost 11 years in my 11th academic year. So what led to this moment? A lot of things, I think. So I actually was recruited to run cross country and track and field here at UWS. So that's what kind of brought me here up north. And I went for communication. I was actually doing some interning at a radio station back home growing up. And so I wanted to go into communication. So that was kind of what led to the communication route. While I was here for my undergrad, I actually got involved doing a lot of things, wanted to do everything. So I worked orientation with Jen Bird and was able to be a lead for that. I was able to work with campus recreation and oversee intramural sports actually by the time I left there. So those 2 opportunities were something I got involved with during my undergrad that were really important. And so from there, I actually worked in radio for a little while after I graduated. And then from there, I actually got a call from, he's our Associate Vice Chancellor of Academic Affairs now, or of Student Affairs, Harry Anderson, called me up and said, hey, looking for somebody to come back, oversee intramurals. So just because I had made that connection during undergrad actually brought me back here because I was kind of missing something. Radio was okay, but I really enjoyed working with students during my undergrad. So I was actually able to come back. It was actually a part-time as half-time overseeing it, but I just took a leap. I was like, let's do it. So one of my first couple days back, I run into Tammy Fanning and she says, hey, we're it's a good old Tam fan. And she's like, hey, so wait, you're only half-time? She's like, we could look at somebody who could be half-time interim in our veteran and non-traditional student center. I'm like, awesome. Not a veteran. I'm like, my brother served, my dad served. I'm like, let's do it. So ended up having this just unconnected 50-50 split with both the veteran and non-traditional student center and campus recreation. And kind of the rest is history, So I ended up transitioning to full-time veteran and non-traditional student center my 3rd year here. Did that for 6.5 years. And then now the last 4 years and change, I've been part of McNair, working with students completing research projects and preparing them for graduate school. So, I think with that, it's, don't be afraid to get involved, and you might not realize that a connection you're making now or things you're involved with during your undergrad can impact you years later. And, just having that one experience can lead to where you're at, in a career move, right? Because I didn't expect during my undergrad that I was going to be working in higher education, but here we are 11 years in. So, so kind of cool how it happened. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. So yeah, rest of my education. So actually wanted to continue pursuing education, thought, hey, being able to teach in higher ed might be a great thing. Continue to work in student affairs and higher ed. I actually did my master's then in strategic leadership through University of Mary, did that program online. which was very interesting because I was in person for undergrad, so did that while I was working full time. Did my master's, and then I actually defended my dissertation for my doctorate this last August, and did that program completely online through University of Wisconsin La Crosse. So great cohort. Got to work with other professionals that are also working in higher ed across the U.S. and actually a couple people outside the U.S. that are working in higher ed. So it's really a cool cohort to connect that way because we were able to have synchronous sessions, but that one was completely online too. So really cool. That is in Doctor of Education in Student Affairs Administration and Leadership. So I'm set, higher ed for life. So
All right. Afternoon, everybody. My name is Jossie Scandell. My journey at UWS really started in high school. I had an accounting class in high school, and I was like, wow, debits and credits, they equal. And so you always know that you have the right answer. That's kind of cool. So I decided at that point in time in high school that I was going to continue my education in accounting, only because it was easy at that point. So I started at UWS right after high school. And at that point in time, I was like, you know, accounting really is easy, but I love animals. I really, really love animals. Always have. I brought animals home as a kid. All the strays ended up at my house. My parents loved it. So I changed my major. I worked with academics here, and they didn't have anything called the pre-vet program at the time, but they said we can do something to set you up with all the pre-veterinary classes if you want to continue your education after UWS. So I switched my major to kind of a conglomerate major that would set me up for success in the future. And I took all the classes that Will mentioned, biology, chemistry, and it was the worst year of my life. I hated every minute of it, and I've never worked so hard for like a C minus. Nothing clicked. It was awful. And I lasted 1 year, and I was like, this is not for me. I'm going back to accounting where everything's at least equals. And then I can spend my time with animals in the future. So that's what I did. I transferred back to accounting at that point in time, finished my 4-year accounting degree here. And at the time that I was here, I got an internship working in the tax department over at Minnesota Power across the bridge, and decided at that point in time that I never wanted to go into public accounting, which a lot of accountants do. I always wanted to work in corporate accounting, work with a team, work with people that didn't have to travel and work a bazillion hours. And so that was always my long-term goal. I wanted to work for Minnesota Power. I'm a very goal-oriented person. So once I set a goal, that's it. I have to try to achieve that goal. So I graduated, and then Minnesota Power didn't have any jobs at the time. They were kind of on a hiring freeze. So I got a job at National Bank of Commerce here in town as their internal auditor, and I spent 3 years there working in internal audit. At that point in time, there was an opening in the internal audit department at Minnesota Power. So I did end up moving back to Minnesota Power and spent 10 years over at that company doing all kinds of different accounting things. And then 10 years in, Superior Water, Light, and Power here in town is owned by Minnesota Power across the bridge. And there was a great leader there that said, hey, we're going to have this opportunity come up, and we want to know if you'd be interested. And I was like, absolutely. That sounds amazing. I'm a hometown girl. I'm born and raised in Superior. I love this community. Anything that I can do to still work within the Elite family. We're all one company, but work in this little tiny utility that's 85 employees and have a huge impact on my community sounds amazing. When I was at Minnesota Power, I decided to go back. And at that point in time, it's probably the same today, but I haven't looked. You need 150 credits to take your CPA exam, so certified public accountant. And that was, again, another goal of mine. But I didn't have enough credits after graduating here. So I went back to UMD and decided to get my MBA at UMD. But life happens sometimes along the way. And I ended up having twins slightly earlier than they were supposed to be born. So I had to take a derail from the MBA. And during that time, I had built up enough credits for the CPA exam. So decided, okay, let's take the CPA exam. And then I went back to UMD and finished my degree. So MBA, CPA, just goes to show you don't have to do things in a linear path. Sometimes life takes you on a journey, and you just have to kind of roll with the punches. but you can always come back and succeed in your goals. So currently I'm the manager of regulatory over at Superior Water, Light and Power. I don't do a ton of accounting anymore, but I lead the teams that do a lot of the accounting behind the scenes. So happy to be here today. Thanks, Heather.
All right, thanks everyone. So this is a two-parter, okay? Focusing on professionalism first. So in your industry, what does professionalism look like? How could one prepare and assimilate to the professionalism culture in your industry?
I've tussled with this one back and forth a lot because professionalism in chiropractic is very different from what you imagine most healthcare providers being. Like when you go to the doctor's office, you go and you sit in the waiting room, and then you get called back by a nurse, and the doctor comes in typically in a white coat, and it's just very formal. And that's not the case, at least not with how I practice. And so this is about the extent of professionalism you get with me, because I want to be relatable and I want to get to know people, because with chiropractic, I'm a hands-on profession and people need to be comfortable with me for me to have my hands on them to do what I need to do. And so the biggest thing would be respect and flexibility, because you need to be able to understand where people are coming from. You need to respect their boundaries, and you need to be able to flip what you're comfortable with on a dime, because somebody that you see at 8 a.m. might be comfortable with everything, and then somebody at 9 a.m. might want very little to do with you. And so you have to be ready to manage that. So the best way to prepare is something that I did when I was in school, was just meet and talk to people and learn from their experiences, because the more experience you get and exposure to other people who grew up differently than you, the better prepared you are going out, because you'll be able to notice those little nuanced changes in how people act, and you'll be able to correct behavior or derail your current conversation to something that might be a little more comfortable for them moving forward.
Great. I have a couple stories, so just let me know if I get to going too long. So I actually intentionally wore a tie today as kind of an impromptu social experiment. I'm not a tie person at all. So my 2-year-old actually picked this out. So there's Winnie the Pooh on here. So, but no, I was curious to see just regular perception, and maybe it's just because I usually don't wear ties. But I actually heard a few comments today, people commenting on me wearing a tie today. So I thought that was very interesting perception of wearing a tie. Somebody said, "Hey, it looks spiffy." Another colleague said, "Hey, you're really dressed up today. Is something happening today? Like, what's going on around campus?" And I thought that was great. And I actually told her that. I said, "Hey, I'm actually doing this just to see what people say today." And I was like, "You were perfect for this. So thank you for saying that." But I don't think you always necessarily need to do that. I think, when I was a young professional and just starting in higher ed, it was kind of wild how often weekly easily I got asked about being a student and how my classes were going by other professionals. So know that that's something you may experience, some like ageism in the workplace as you get involved. So, sometimes dressing what's perceived as, like your traditional cultural like professionalism with a tie, maybe something you need to do just for perception's sake. I'm not saying that's what you have to do, but in some cultural workplaces, you might need to do that, right? So I just thought that was really, really interesting. And so I kind of combined my two stories there about that. But typically I don't wear a tie. I'm rocking some tennis shoes. You can't tell right now. So they're just more comfortable, and people don't know either, but I'm also dealing with the like kind of ongoing Achilles issue. So I'm like, you know what, we're not rolling with dress shoes right now because I can't find it comfortable enough ones. And nobody typically comments about it unless I wear my bright orange tennis shoes. Then some people have things to say, but they're my most comfortable shoes. So, that's what I kind of think about it. But, I think regardless of that, with any job that you go into or any role that you have around professionalism, like big things that you can control is, showing up on time, having like clear, active communication and meeting deadlines that are set within roles. Like those are things that you can typically control. And I think those things and not being willing to dive in head first, all of those things are going to be helpful for growing professionalism and you being really a reliable person within the organization you're in. So, yeah.
And I'll keep mine short because I don't know if it really matters what your profession is. I think the things that Will and Monty talked about, the respect, showing up to be respectful, showing up on time, showing up prepared, no matter what you're walking into, is going to be the same no matter what industry that you're in. So there's going to be differences in my industry on dress code versus what, Monty and Will might have, but that you're going to figure that out in whatever career you go into. And even my career at Minnesota Power has been different than my career at Superior Water, Light and Power. Again, same company, but different expectations around that. But never has it changed the expectation to show up, to be professionally prepared, to be professionally engaged, to just show up, to know that the people that you're talking with and you're working with have your respect, your time, and are intentionally giving the attention that they deserve when they're spending their time with you. So I would just leave it at that no matter what career you're in. Sure.
I couldn't help but notice a theme of, the dress code and talking about that. So I wanted to do a quick plug for our UW Superior Career Closet. So of course, like we mentioned, every company is different. Expectations on dress code may be based on a few factors like weather, region, industry. And as you know, higher ed's a little more flexible unless Monty's strutting on a tie. So I just wanted to say, if you are going into a field where you need to maybe wear some more professional clothing items, we do have opportunities for free clothing for our students in the Link Center. Thank you.
And I'll just add one thing. If you're not sure how to construct a professional email, please ask any professor. They will be happy to help you. Or Liza, yeah. Make sure you have a subject line, have a greeting, things like that. It goes a long way. So thinking back to the early days of your career, can you share a time where you exercised your leadership skills, even if you were not in an official leadership capacity? And I think that this is really important for our students to hear because they can take what they're doing here, even as undergrads or graduate students, and put that on a resume. They can use that, for their future career. So talk about that a little bit, please.
I like the wording of this question because I'm in the early days of my career. So I'm living this experience. So the way that my position works, I am considered an associate doctor. So I am the only person who works in this clinic up here in Superior, but the owner and my boss is based out of Ladysmith. So we have 3 different locations. There's the owner doctor, the clinic director, married couple, they're the owners of the company. And then there's 1 doc in each location. And then there's staff that are in the other 2 locations because they're busier than I am at the moment. So there's like tiers of leadership, and based on what I'm at, I am an employee, so I'm a follower in that regard. But being that I'm the only person up here, I have to take charge, take responsibility, and be the one who's doing all of the work to make my clinic function. So if I am having to meet with a group of physical therapists, that's on me setting up the meeting, making it happen. If there's any sort of advertisement that has to happen, I go to that meeting, get all the details, and then I bring that back to my boss. And then we have a conversation on, is this going to be worth it? What's the return on investment? How are we going to measure efficacy and all of these other things? So it's very flexible, and you fluctuate in that role of leadership. So whether you are actually the leader or if you are just the follower taking on those roles, go with it with gusto, because worst case is you fail, you learn a lesson, and you do it again. So just taking that taking yourself out of your comfort zone to just do it, because the only way you're going to grow is if you push yourself outside of that. And I think that's the best leadership skill that I am currently still learning, especially since I'm in the beginning stages of my career here.
All right. I'm trying to think of a specific time, but I think times when I was even in my undergrad, just being involved, like I'd mentioned before, I think some of those times I didn't realize what that impact would be later. I didn't realize when I was having fun, being an intramural supervisor and getting yelled at for bad calls we made as officials and intramurals, that was something that would be a good learning experience for me later at working in higher ed and what that would look like. So I think sometimes you might not even realize the experiences and the things you're doing right now will be whether you're whatever you're involved in, student orgs, athletics, anything like that, like those can be good opportunities for things that you're already building those leadership capacities. You don't need to be, on your leadership board for that organization or a captain of your team or anything like that to make that impact. So I think, those are ways you can develop that. I think of ways when I did get involved here, at UW Superior, just being on different committees. So when you get into different roles, just being willing to step in and just take on something, and when people are looking for people to voluntarily, do things, say yes, don't be afraid to say yes. Cause as Will said, it's a learning experience, right? So, and then you can be, looked to as someone who, can be that leader. So that's how you kind of develop those things just by taking that jump and leap. So I think that's been something that's been helpful for me as you kind of continue to grow and take on those different things. So I don't know if I have one specific example, but all those things I feel like lead to now, and all those experiences can shape you later. So don't be afraid to do those things right now that will have that impact 10 years down the road. And you're gonna be like, wow, I'm so glad I did that at UWS, and not even realize that impact that's had.
I have an example to share, but I have to preface it with, we talk a lot at work about leadership, and we always talk about it in the facet of little L leadership versus big L leadership. And what I'd like to tell all of you as you're getting out of your college careers, or even just beginning your college careers and into your professional careers, is you never have to wait to be a big L leader to be a little L leader. I think starting in my career, some of the best things that I ever did was stepped into that little L leadership. And really, this is the example. So that there's opportunities that we have at work to sit on different teams, different committees. And sorry. Okay, so the one that I really valued is Elite Minnesota Power, Superior Water, Light and Power has a value around safety. We work in electricity day in and day out, and if you don't do the right things around electricity, you can die. So it's a value that we work on every day. And when I worked downtown at Minnesota Power, I worked in a general office building, so it was not around electricity. It was not around anything that you would perceive as something that can kill you. But we had a safety improvement team, and every year they had new people that would come in and out of that team. And I raised my hand and I was like, I want to be part of that team. I would say, don't wait for somebody to ask you, lean into that and just seek out opportunities to meet new people, try new things, do things that scare you, and really get involved. So I joined that team and I learned some really cool people in the company. And then as part of that, grew into the chair of that team, where I got to work with an executive on an ongoing basis and just really, really, really leaned into that little L leadership. So anytime you get an opportunity to do that, you don't ever have to wait until you become a formal leader, a supervisor, somebody that formally leads people, to lean into that small L leadership.
All right. So a key part of leadership is persuading others to work on a shared goal. How do you utilize your skills in keeping projects on track while allowing for individual contributors? So in other words, how do you motivate colleagues and team members?
The biggest thing is, even though I work by myself, I still have a team down in Ladysmith and in the Eau Claire offices that collaborates with me doing various things. And since we are so distanced, communication is the biggest thing because I want to grow my practice. I want to be successful. I want to help people. To do all of those things, I need to rely on those other people to do that job effectively. So I need to tell them where I'm going. My schedule is currently blocked because I'm not in my clinic. Please do not schedule patients at that time because nobody's going to be there. Like, these are little things that make a big difference when moving forward, because when I get back to the clinic, people are going to be asking me, where were you? And I can tell them I was helping. I was on a panel talking to students. That involvement is a huge piece. Then I take that to my staff meeting and we have a conversation about how that went and how do we feel like that's going to help others? How is it helping me? All of these other things. So sharing the small successes, sharing our experiences, and keeping that communication open moving forward, because when you're so invested in what you're doing, it's hard to see the bigger picture sometimes. So when you're sharing your experience, somebody who's not directly related might be able to see a path that you don't see. So utilize your peers, utilize your friends, and keep that open communication, because that's going to help drive you to the success that you want.
So I think a big thing when I've worked on teams and led teams before is how can you create that shared interest for everybody that's involved. So I think about, if you're not passionate about something or don't care, ultimately it's going to be hard for you to kind of move towards that goal or want to try to do those things. So I think just creating ownership in that is really important for all the members of the team. Make sure that you're valuing and getting every perspective of everybody on the team, so that everybody feels valued and an active part of probably creating what that shared goal is and outcome is. So I think just having them involved throughout the process is really important. As a leader, just making sure that, even it's not really a top down, it's kind of that, who shared this with me just recently, but it's it's just kind of like a horizontal cross model, right, of leadership. So I think that's really an important piece of that too, of just having that, so that they're really dedicated and motivated to do it, because that's how you get people really engaged in something. So I think that's always important, to bring them to the table at the beginning, and help them create that shared goal and kind of, reverse design what that looks like, and have them involved in all those aspects of the process. And you're just going to see so much more out of everybody and help create that shared vision.
I would say always hire people smarter than you. This is the first thing that I would say. And then realize that you are never the smartest person in the room, right? When you're working towards a shared goal, you really have to lean into others to figure out strengths, weaknesses, who can you task to do what things, and who can you lean into to do other things that really motivates each individual. It's about connecting. It's about knowing the people that you're working with, which I think is so important in any team that you're working on. You have to know the people to get to know how to get to that shared goal. So anytime that you can build connections with people, build relationships with people, to figure out how to get to that common goal is going to be a great thing for your future.
Yeah, I think, people have to trust you in order to follow you, right? So that's a big part of it. So, as leaders and professionals, we have to make a lot of decisions, right? So tell us about a time when you struggled with a decision. What process or tools did you use to execute the next steps and continue onward?
So my experience for this one actually happened during my time here at UW Superior. My junior year, I was working my way up the ladder in residence life. So I was an RA my sophomore year. I was a hall manager my junior year. And going into my senior year, I had applied for the hall manager position. I had been offered it. However, my friends that were all in residence life were taking a step back and moving off campus. And so with my passion to help the incoming students, I was torn between doing something for myself and continuing to do stuff for others. And so it was a lot of self-reflection up front of, what do I want to do moving forward? Do I want to continue to help students, or do I want to be a little selfish and use my senior year to do things that I want to do? Seeing that I had spent 3 years helping others, I was like, yep, I think I'm going to take the selfish route, which in retrospect isn't actually selfish. It is what you need to do in the moment. So don't think about treating yourself as selfishness. And then after I did that self-reflection, I went to my friends and I looked for other opinions. So again, that communication aspect. Then I went to my parents to discuss the financial obligations that would be on me, considering that I would no longer have my room and board covered. I would have to be responsible for that. How is that going to impact me moving forward? And what burden would I have to take on to offset that? And then I went to one of the directors of Residence Life saying, hey, if I leave this position that you had offered me, what are the next steps? Because this is going to impact you moving forward, because you've already done the hiring process, you've done those interviews. What is this looking like moving forward? So taking those steps, going from personal, interpersonal to group setting, and making sure that you have those conversations. Communication seems to be my theme here. Making sure that you have an informed decision, so that way you make the decision that's the best for you, but also making sure that you mitigate the impact that it has on everybody around you. I ended up moving off campus. I had rescinded my acceptance of that position. They hired a new hall director, and I lived off campus with my two best friends, and I took on 3 different jobs on campus instead. So just less responsibility. And I even, because one of my jobs was at the YU front desk, and they had offered me a manager role on that, our desk manager. And I was like, nope, I am taking all minimal obligation jobs this year so that I can focus on enjoying myself and enjoying my senior year. So I was still responsible financially by having those jobs, but I definitely took the lowest rung on the ladder so that I wasn't responsible for anybody else.
So I'm going to talk about, it was my first semester actually working here as a professional. So I had to have a difficult conversation with a student employee at the time. Without getting into too many details, we'll just say they weren't fulfilling some responsibilities, and there's some other issues too that had to be talked about. So very new, very young professional, I have to have a difficult conversation with another person about that. And so it was, okay, what do we do to go through this process? And actually, it's just so funny looking back and reflecting on that situation too, and how I would approach it now. But just not having those tools to really do that at the time, I thought I would go this route of talking about. I actually utilized mentors at the time, and I think that's something that's always important for you, and that's kind of a lifelong career thing that you can do. Look to other leaders that you value within your organization. It could be leaders that you're working with now. I mean, it could be faculty, staff that you have here at UWS that you can turn to as mentors, and just being able to create that network. I was able to rely on those people and kind of talk to them about, hey, how can I approach this situation and handle this conversation? And they were really good about it, and people that I really respected. So I was able to utilize them to help kind of execute those next steps and what that conversation could look like for them. And I think about what that looks like even now. I have colleagues at other universities that are in a similar role as myself. So as you create some of those professional networks, talk about how they lead, and how they, struggle with difficult decisions that they have. And you'll realize that, it's very similar to what you're dealing with. And you can kind of really just bounce ideas off of each other of how you handle different difficult decisions you have to make throughout your career. So you can find those people within your organization. You can also find those people in other organizations as well. But I think just having that network of people so that it's not always on your shoulders, especially when you're a young and new professional, it's so helpful in developing those tools that you'll utilize further on down the road.
I think you'll find key themes to all of the things that we're talking about today: communication and building relationships with people. I think whenever I'm dealing with a decision that I have to make, which is daily. It's a daily basis in the role that I'm currently in. You have to find those that you trust. And you find those that you trust by building those relationships along the way. And that can start here, like Monty just said, at UWS. There's people that I still call on from my college, days a couple of years ago. I'll say that just because what I told you guys earlier, a couple of years ago. But you have to start with those relationships, and that can be career relationships, that can be personal relationships, and then any of that decision making it becomes easier along the way. I think, my example that I would give you is just one that I did today. So I serve on a couple of boards here in town, and I chair one across the bridge in Duluth, and we have a grant round that's due tomorrow for review, 8 a.m. tomorrow. So I had to make the decision today. Do I call the executive director and tell him that there's a fairly decent chance that my review is not going to be done on time? Or do I cram it all night tonight and give up everything that I was supposed to do tonight to get that review done? And I trust him, and I trust he knows that I'm a busy professional and a mom and a wife, and I have a lot going on. So I called him and left him a message. He called me back right before we started, and I broke the news to him that he may or may not get that full grant review cycle done at 8 a.m. tomorrow, as he's expecting. But because we have trust in each other, we know that when we meet, we have a meeting at 11 o'clock tomorrow. We're going to get through it as we need to get through it, and we're going to figure it out along the way. But even that decision today, as I was thinking about it, was like, do I do one or do I do the other? And I think it comes back to that trust in building relationships that really made me make the decision to just call him and lay it out.
Yeah, Jesse, I think that's an example that our students can really relate to too. Maybe something happened in their life and, they can't get that assignment in, by the due date. I mean, if you are a professional in the way you, maybe ask your professor for a little bit more time, a little bit of grace, it goes a long way. So, no. Not every time, right, Tom? Okay. um, so, we've talked a lot about what students can do, right, while they're in school and, early in their careers. Is there anything else that they could really focus on now while they're in school that will help them develop leadership and professionalism for their future career?
Another thing that happened to me during my time here at UWS, I spent a lot of time reflecting on what my strengths were and what I was going to use moving forward, because I'm a very emotionally driven person. I make a lot of my decisions based on helping others. So me knowing that, I've surrounded myself with people who are very logical and who make decisions based on the facts. And to this day, when big decisions come up, they are one of the first people that I call. I'm like, hey, here's a situation I'm dealing with. Here's how I feel about it. Now ask me all of your logical questions. So that way we can hash this out. And they have done the same thing for me. Since they're very logical, they call me and we talk through why they want to make the decisions they're making. And then I bring in the emotional aspect of, how do you feel about it? What do you want to do here? So identify your strengths and find people that you trust that have different strengths so that you can bounce ideas off of each other and make sure that you are addressing the problem from all sides.
Yeah, I think just look at experiences that are going to help develop that leadership and professionalism that you can utilize in your career. It might be a voluntary experience. It might pay less than maybe another role could right now if you're looking at a job, but look at what is the value long term for yourself. So I think that's something that's important to look at too. Just what are those different opportunities out there that you can seek out? There's a lot of great ways for you to get involved. And, I always like to plug AmeriCorps. I've had a lot of students that can do that as an option after they graduate. So just look at some of those opportunities that can get you involved. And if you're not sure what that career path is years down the road and you're nearing graduation, I know that was something I was like, well, is this what it's going to be long term? And I work with students all the time where I'm not sure. I'm graduating in a couple of months and I'm not sure what that path looks like. Just look for opportunities that can you can find out what you do want to do and what you don't want to do. But along the way, you're going to develop the skills that you're going to utilize regardless of what that is. It's a path, it's a journey. As you alluded to before, it's not linear at all. So just make sure that you do that, and always step in, look to those experiences.
And I would just say, something I said earlier is just lean in. Lean into whatever it is that brings you joy and happiness. And here on campus, whether it's a team, whether it's a committee, whatever it might be, just lean in and try to get the most out of that opportunity. One of my favorite mentors always said, life gets exciting on the edge of your comfort zone. So even if it's scary, even if it's something you've never done before, don't pass up an opportunity to just lean in and learn from it.
Thank you. So I think we have time for one more question here, and then we can open it up. And if anyone has any questions for our panelists, how do you handle disagreements with coworkers in a professional manner? And maybe you had disagreements with other students and you handled it in a professional manner. So speak on that a little bit.
I get a little bit of grace with this one because my coworkers aren't in my immediate vicinity. So anytime that I have issues or disagreements with one of my coworkers, the first thing I do is just take myself out of that situation. So I no longer have to respond to messages because they can't come find me down the hallway. But I take that time to just process how I am feeling. Because again, my emotional driven self, I don't want to react based on emotion. I want to react based on the situation. And so I let myself process how I'm feeling, get that out of the way, and then I come back and I analyze the situation before I go in and have a calm conversation, making sure I take that time to ground myself, because in the heat of the moment when emotions are high, people are going to say things that they don't mean, or they're going to be hurtful, and that's not helpful to anybody. So making sure that I am in an atmosphere of being able to handle a constructive, maybe highly criticized situation, and being able to leave that comfortably. So that way nobody's feelings are hurt, but we also address the situation.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. So one thing I want to say is when I'm not working here, I actually officiate basketball. So that's why I kind of laughed because I officiate high school basketball. And so conflict resolution is my jam. I'm a beloved official in the society. So so how do I handle disagreements? I think you got to be on your feet all the time with that. So but one thing we always say as officials too is, and I think it's a good model to live by too, and in your workplace too, is if you permit it, you promote it. So, if you don't address something, you're saying that's okay, and I'm okay with that. And so I think that's always a good motto to roll with, as Will alluded to as well. If there's something that's going to get you heated, just to step away. And especially you don't answer that email if you're not going to respond in that professional way, because you don't want to put something in writing that you're going to regret doing later. Take the time to step away for something like that. But otherwise, I think it's important to have those open, direct conversations too. Radical candor is something that I like to practice too. It's just making sure that you're open to having those conversations and not going to passively let something go until it builds up to something more than it needs to be. So I think that's important to make sure you do have those conversations in a timely manner to be able to address certain disagreements or things like that. And a lot of times it could be just pulling an individual aside, after a confrontation or something that's happened. But just making sure you can come to an agreement. You might not always be in the same place with something, but at least you can respect each other's perspectives and what that looks like, and have that civil dialogue. So I think those are really important pieces.
I think that if you have the ability to take the 24-hour pause, please do that. Every time that I have not done that, I have regretted it. And you learn that sometimes the hard way. So if you have the ability to take the 24-hour pause, please do that. The other thing that I like to do, especially if I'm really heated, is email myself. Just get the words on paper and send it to somebody that's safe, which is usually myself, usually. But don't send it especially if it's in an email format. And then when you do come to the place where you have to have that conversation about a disagreement, make sure you stick to fact. You never want to go after somebody's emotion. You never want to go after, the way that it felt or the way that you perceived that. To go to the fact and really go back to the disagreement based on how do we come together to work together to figure this out and move forward, based on, instead of going after, where do we disagree. So I like to approach every situation that has a disagreement with okay, that's great, but here's the facts and how do we move it forward. But again, if you have the ability to take the pause, please take the pause.
I just want to add too, more often than not too, misunderstandings happen over written text and email all the time. Don't be afraid to pick up the phone and talk to somebody, because a lot of times I've seen you find out, oh, you're on the same page. I just didn't clearly articulate that in my email. And so we talked about it for 2 minutes versus sending 10 emails back and forth, and we solved the issue that we had or that we were kind of confronting one another about, right? So don't be afraid to do that too. But you kind of remind me of that. So awesome.
Yeah, I think the key themes here really, with professionalism and leadership, respect, good communication, getting yourself out there, out of your comfort zone. There's so many ways that you can learn how to be more professional and be leaders. So thank you so much. Open it up to questions, comments, questions. Anyone? Yeah. Do you want the mic or are you good? No.
I'm going to start because I capitalized on my network here at UWS. So when I was here, I was involved with anything. I talked with all my professors. One of my professors was in the psychology department for one class I had my freshman year. I talked with her once a semester throughout my 4 years of school here. Got a lot of life advice from her. Every single job that I had, connected with my employer and my coworkers. When I went off to school, they were in the back burner. I came back here and I started my practice. The first thing that I did was reconnect with every single one of those people that is still around this area, because they gave me direction and who else I should connect with. So as a chiropractor, somebody here working in higher ed, not directly related to my profession, but they were like, hey, you should go talk to this person who works in this area. Another person that I talked to, now all of a sudden my branch goes to 5 other people. One of those people branches to 5 other people. So get those meaningful relationships now, because then when you're out in the real world, you can tap into them again, even if they're not directly relatable to what you're moving forward in.
That covers everything, No, but no, I think another thing too, just look at professional organizations you can get involved with, both here, in the UWS community, in the regional community, and also just looking at what some of those national ones are. If you're not sure what those look like, talk to your faculty and staff, like who can promote those, especially in like your discipline, your major you're in. They can share what professional organizations exist, because a lot of them exist at a state and federal level. And a lot of times for undergraduate students, it's free, or it's, 10, 20 bucks a year versus the, $250 that you pay to join it as a professional member. But that can get you connected to other professionals within that field. And those can be connections down the road. And a lot of times they have opportunities through those professional organizations for students that are internships or scholarships and other things just by joining some of those professional orgs. So I always try to push students to getting involved in those and just knowing, okay, here's what I can get involved with in my major that I didn't even know about existed. And you can attend. There's so many opportunities to connect now virtually. So it's like you can connect with people, you know, on the East and West Coast like that, you know, where you maybe couldn't otherwise, where they have kind of formal events for organizations. So I think those opportunities are out there, but don't underestimate the conversations that you have. You know, just with faculty now might be somebody, your staff member, like a 5-minute conversation you have now could be impactful years down the road, and you don't realize that even. So.
I love what Will said about, you know, starting those connections and doing the networking while you guys are in school now. I didn't do a lot of that when I was in school. I went to class. I never lived on campus. I left campus. I connected with my other friends. And it wasn't until I left here that I realized that I really missed out on that and really missed out on building those connections, and had to wait until I got into my career to figure out then how do I start building a lot of those networking connections and networking relationships. But now I think I know that now I challenge my kids. My kids right now are at the stage where they don't want to do anything if their friends aren't doing it. I find that extremely annoying. And I think it's because that was me when I was younger. I didn't want to do anything unless my friends were doing it. So I challenge any of you that are in that, you know, if you're into whatever your career is going to be, just get out and network and find the people that you don't know, find the people that you can connect with, and just start building that, because the friends that you have are great, but you need to figure out what you want to do in life, and you can't wait for your friends to try to help you figure that out. So do it now, do it in college, at least start it in college, and then just don't stop.
Another plug from Liza, I know. But I think with networking too, no one has a personal Rolodex anymore. Do you guys know what a Rolodex is? Okay, I'm dating myself here. But I think the power of LinkedIn is really important, because that's where you can hold all of those connections. It's really hard to hold all of those connections up in your brain because you're filling it with amazing knowledge from your classes and from your extracurriculars. So please take the alumni's advice from networking now and connecting with people on the World Wide Web, specifically LinkedIn, because that it can hold it for you for years and years. And when you do have to reconnect, say, 1, 2, 5, 10 years down the road, there it is for you all in one place. So if you need help creating a nice LinkedIn profile, here's my plug, is to please come to the Link Center. We have some materials where we can help you create a nice looking professional profile. Yes. Okay, let's wrap things up. Does anyone have any questions or any more things that we want to connect with our amazing alumni? Thank you. Actually, let's take a moment and give them a round of applause, please. Okay, so a lot of the competencies that we talked about today can be actively practiced in campus events, such as the career and internship